Welcome, everyone, to our space for modern polymaths. I'm Samantha Postman, and I have other hosts here with me today, George Silverman and Dan
Hi.
Roeder. So we're going to be covering. Hi, George. I'm so glad you guys are here.
Morning.
Hi, Dan. So we're going to be discussing today how to know if you're a polymath. And we've been getting a lot of interaction on our Twitter accounts since we've been talking about polymath so much. So we're super excited to talk about what a polymath is and find out if you're a polymath. So the three of us hosts are going to talk a little bit about what a polymath is, and we're going to have some time for some interaction. We've got a surprise quiz for you to find out if you're a polymath. So before I get started and do some introductions quickly, because we know that some people are on the replay and they may want to know who's speaking today, I'm going to put George up and let him introduce himself. And if you've got any comments that you wanted to make before we in the opening of the show, love to hear from you, George.
Oh, thanks. It's an honor to be here. I'm I like to call myself a recovering and reformed psychologist. I'm a retired psychologist. Not here in my capacity as a psychologist, but that will be reflected in what I say. I'm the guy who, I guess, was first to do what is now commonly called social audio over 50 years ago by telephone conference call. So I've been I've been interested in polymathy since I was a teenager. I was studying Galileo and Da Vinci and Sherlock Holmes. Actually, Sherlock Holmes wasn't a polymath, but that's another story. And so I've had that interest. I've known that word since I was 17, and I've been studying. I'm close to 80 years old. I've studied polymathy my whole life. So, and I am one. I are one. Thanks.
Thanks for such a great introduction, George. And he's being quite modest because he's got quite a discipline of expertise there. He's also a master magician, as well as a sous chef.
Right.
And he's also an author.
Sous vide chef.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that, sous vide chef. And also a multiple-time author. He's got a couple of books you can buy on Amazon that he used during his consulting business with the social audio. So
well, thank you.
I
didn't want to go on and on.
Photography. We some of us have a list and we don't want to add them all on.
My
but
list
I wanted
is
to add on today.
My list is 52 items long, and Dr. M was in the audience last time I talked to him. His list is 72 items long. So I mean that's the way we guys are, you know.
Yeah, I wanted to add just a couple of other ones on there.
Thanks.
So
I appreciate it. It feels immodest, and that's part of the whole issue of polymathy, but we'll talk about later.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to do an introduction with Dan. I'd love to hear, just tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the areas that you have expertise, Dan.
Hey, good to be here. And full disclosure, I'm on a bus on the way to Reno to fly to New York. So
Whoa.
we've got, I'm an edupreneur, and I work for an organization called the David Z Foundation. We're a music nonprofit, and we basically write songs and produce music videos at the professional level for kids in schools and organizations around the world. And so that's what I'm heading out to our first live event, which is featuring Stone Temple Pilots and CO2 and Steven Adler from Guns.
Oops, you're cutting out a little bit. The bus may be going through a tunnel. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear. So I'm gonna go out, reboot, and come back.
Hey, George.
And now I'm hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I'm hearing.
Yeah. I can't hear anybody. Is Samantha still there?
Um,
Oh, was you guys didn't hear anything? I was literally talking for a while.
no, it was on mute.
No.
Oh my
No.
gosh. All right, my entire introduction was on mute. I'm sorry for everyone there. I was so busy getting George to come back up that I must have hit mute on my button.
I'm sorry.
So, no, that's fine. It's just this is how it is, and this is what versatility is about.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what as I was saying earlier, I just wanted to finish off with with Dan. Dan's got a major musical talent, as well as bringing it in with drama and shows, which actually Leonardo da Vinci had some of those same traits, by the way, Dan. And he's also, because he's a special ed teacher in his past, he's able to combine multiple disciplines for a unique education experience for not only those who have challenges with learning, but for everyone. So he's able to teach education and memorization through songs and through poetry and things like that. So, and for myself, just a little introduction before we move on. Oh, yeah. What I also wanted to say is Dan is on a bus. So we had to change the time today. And this is something, if you consider yourself very versatile, you're most likely a polymath. At first, when we were embracing polymath, a lot of us talked about being adaptable. I prefer the word versatile because it's much more proactive and intentional, whereas being adaptable is much more reactive, and sometimes out of necessity. Yeah, and versatile is can be out of necessity as well, but there's a more positive attitude, and that's exactly what Dan was like. Oh, no problem, Samantha. I can adjust the time for you today. I'll be on a bus. We'll just make it work. And he was just very easy. He was very confident that he could do it. He wasn't worried if it was going to be perfect. He has enough skills. He has enough skills to be able to just be versatile and make a change on the fly. So that's something that's very unique about polymaths. For my own self, just a small introduction of just like other polymaths, I've quite a range of expertise. Some are, glorified hobbies that I would probably be able to get paid for if I wanted to. But my three paid positions that I've had over a period of time, and just for any of you to know, being a polymath can mean that you have expertise or a career or profession. It can be consecutive, which means, each one after the other. And it could also mean concurrent. Most polymaths we know, though, usually are concurrently doing, they may have one career at a time, but they're pursuing a side hustle or a hobby at a professional level or close to. So for me, I was a tax expert by first trade. I've done over 7,500 tax returns. And although I'm very proficient at tax in Canada, what I really learned from that is human behavior. Because when you see people's finances and you work with them every single year, you get a synopsis. You find out about their family, their medical, their priorities, how they spend their money, what kind of jobs they have, what kind of education they have, and then how they apply their value systems with all of that. So I learned a lot about humans actually during that time period. My husband and I also run a commercial crop farm, so I'm a managing partner and a CFO on the farm, as well as for quite some time I did some professional photography. However, I've moved that back into my hobby because I found that it kind of took the joy out when I made it professional. So, and then actually now I'm a founder of the Medici modern polymath community, and so that's something new that I've been working on lately. So just to get started, we've got quite a few people who've entered the room. We've got some treats for all of you today, and we're gonna laugh. I'm like, some people think that polymaths are really serious, but honestly, you should see we have these weekly mastermind groups, and oh my gosh, we just like laugh at ourselves so much. It's so much fun. So even though we're like vivacious learners, we we like to laugh, and we laugh at ourselves a lot, which we're going to be doing today. We've got some other Medici modern polymath members in the audience today. If you're watching the replay, you can only see the people who are on stage, but the people who are in the audience are also on our screens that we can see on our phones or on our desktops, but you won't be able to see them on the replay, just because those who've agreed to speak get added on the top. So if you're a Medici member, I'd love for you to take the mic and you can come up and be on the stage while we chat. So I'll let George and Dan take over any of that, and then we'll have some time for some questions. Does that sound good, everyone?
Hi.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds great.
All right. George, would you
And
mind starting off with just giving us a definition of, we're just going to start with what you all want to know. What's the definition? I'm sure some of you have never heard of the word polymath before. I'm new to the word polymath, to be honest. Someone came to me and said, so I was met somebody on Clubhouse and they're like, oh, you're a polymath. And I was like, what the heck's a polymath? Meanwhile, here's me on Google checking it
thought it
out.
was a disease.
I
And
know,
a lot
I was like,
and a lot of specialists do think it's a disease.
that's true.
Or a disorder.
We're going to talk about ADHD pretty soon.
Right.
So for those of you, I'm sure you went and Googled polymath. Maybe you already knew what it was. So we're going to let George, because he's our resident expertise on polymath, because he's known what a polymath is for a long, long time. So we're going to have George come up and speak about what a polymath is, and then we're going to get into a quiz so that you can all find out if you are one too.
Well, I'm not ready with a formal, rigorous genus differentia definition, but a polymath, just loosely, is somebody who is accomplished in multiple fields. And I mean accomplished, but not necessarily at the 90th percentile, 99th. They're not necessarily super duper masters at every field. They have a variety of expertise in the different fields. And we'll talk about how the strength is the combination, not the mastery of any given field. But it's basically just several different fields. Usually, more formally, it's considered to be 3 or more, highly accomplished in 3 or 4 different fields. By highly accomplished, it can mean 25th percentile, it can mean 75th percentile, it can mean 99th percentile. But it's more, from a psychological point of view, it's more a cognitive style, a way of thinking. That is, what we do as polymaths is each field has a set of skills. Each set, some people call it a skill stack or a talent stack. Each field has a characteristic way, for instance, of automobile mechanic and a internist both engage in diagnostic problem solving. There are different. An artist engages in a different kind of creative problem solving. Each field has its own way of approaching things. And what the polymath does is he or she takes what they learn in one field and apply it to the other fields. Not just the content, which is important, but the process. For instance, Einstein said, imagination is more important than intelligence. He said what his edge was not raw IQ, not raw intelligence, but the fact, really 2 things he said. He said, I don't give up when other people do. I stick to things longer. And he felt he had, over all the other physicists in the world, and I'm quite sure it's true, he had imagination. And there are many famous quotes of his about imagination. Just Google Einstein imagination. You see some wonderful ones. But he said imagination is more important than intelligence. So it's the polymathy is the ability to take what you learn in one field, the content and the process, most importantly the process, in one field, and apply it to other fields. That's what the specialists don't get. They don't get how does art apply to physics. They don't get how does being an automobile mechanic and tinkering with your car, what does that have to do with whatever else? So that's it, basically. I concocted, I think, an interesting, quick example. Let's say somebody's a surgeon, but he's not the world's greatest surgeon. His dexterity is not up there with the best in the world. Maybe he's in the 25th percentile. Maybe he's in the 50th percentile. He's an okay surgeon, but he's not a master surgeon. But he's also he's got a lot of human skills and is very articulate and is a really good teacher. So he could be, for instance, a television surgeon, a medical consultant for cable news, and explain when various famous people go under surgery. He could be the guy who comes on and explains the surgery. Now, it's not that he can do it better than anybody else. Maybe Sanjay Gupta, I don't know, is a good surgeon or not a good, who knows? But it's not important. See, that's the point. It's not important. What is important is, can he explain the surgical principles and what's going on in the operation to the layman who's looking at it right now? So that's the way polymathy works. You're using what's in one field in the other field, and usually your field of concentration is a combination of 2, 3, 4, 5 of these other fields. Where those circles overlap, that's your calling, that's your purpose, that's your mission in life.
All right, like when we use that Venn diagram. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to go to the Venn diagram. Great.
Right.
just thinking, thinking George mentioned a specialist, and when we're thinking of niching down, I consider being a polymath like a super niche, because you've got all of these different circles that are overlapping in a very, very specific way. That you are the best in the world at doing that thing. And so it also made me think of the word encouragement, just talking about being able to hop between groups, being able to be versatile, which Samantha, I absolutely adore that word. I was just recalling, I never really had a group in high school. I didn't have a niche. I didn't have like a clique. I floated to every clique.
Yep.
And I was able to feel comfortable within each one. And I picked up, parts of my personality and my high school experience from floating around, and I kind of do that in life now.
But you accomplished in each field too, and you did some floating around. So the important thing to distinguish here that I didn't mention is the difference between a polymath and a dilettante. A dilettante is a flitter who stays at the superficial level and dabbles in a whole lot of different things. Like a gourmet, a dilettante. There are many words for jack of all trades. Those kinds of people who are good at a lot of things, but not a real master of anything. And that is not what we're talking about. The polymaths, like Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin was the leading scientist of his time. He invented electrical science. He wasn't just a guy with a kite and a silk string, et cetera, et cetera. That experiment was the result of a deep knowledge of at least what they knew at the time, of electricity. He was the world's leading expert in electricity. So he wasn't just screwing around with kites. He wasn't just
and would anyone call Leonardo da Vinci a generalist? So a lot of you in the audience have heard this jack of all trades. In fact, I've been working on our
master of none.
Yeah, I've been working on our Medici Modern Polymath Manifesto, and it's I'm doing the finishing touches on it. But one of the lines, I don't have it all the way down yet, but one of our lines, I'm going to be a little cheeky because we like to be a little cheeky. But in the manifesto is a little cheeky, and I don't have it all the way written out yet. But basically, it's like society doesn't even know our name. Our name isn't Jack or Jill. That means master of none. Like, it's literally, every time someone says, oh, you're a jack of all trades, or you're a generalist, there's a new community called generalists. And I think that I get that they're using that name because they've been called that, but we're not generalists. That's the thing. Would you ever have called Leonardo da Vinci a generalist? He had the ability to, he had the ability to be able to be inserted into almost any discussion and be able to contribute or understand, because once you add up the disciplines, there's major overlaps between them. So I'll give you an example. So this is something
I have an example, Samantha Postman. Drop her into anything and she's got something to talk about. She's got a story.
That's right.
Same with Dan, same with me, same with half the people and probably all the people in the audience. That's who we are. But go ahead.
So I'm going to give you.
I got a little enthusiastic. Sorry.
That's okay. I like that. We love it. We're a very enthusiastic group. So hopefully some of you will want to join our community, because it's actually a lot of fun. Because it's a place. Something that George said the other day really resonated with me. He's like, it's a place that I recharge. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that, because often when we're finished our community groups and we get to know, we talking to each other, we understand each other's support group, we mastermind, help each other out, because we have this unique ability to see things from multiple perspectives. And because all of us are multidisciplined, we're able to speak and give specific insight into other people in our group who are struggling in a particular area or trying to accomplish something, because we have enough knowledge and mastery in it. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah, if you're stuck, go to a polymath.
Yeah, if you're stuck, we just put that T-shirt up. There's a T-shirt about it. Anyway, that's a little side note. So I'll just give you an example of something that a polymath can do, a superpower. So if some of you in this audience could do something like this, then you're probably a polymath. So when I was trying to learn Spanish, I thought I had been trying to learn the traditional way in a classroom as an adult, and that was going nowhere fast. So I thought to myself, okay, how can I become proficient in Spanish quickly? Because I've traveled to Latin American countries quite a bit, and even just for safety, to understand what people are talking about is really important. So this is what I did. I thought, this is what we do. This is what polymaths do. We very quickly draw on all of our other strengths and then figure out where the overlaps are. So in this particular case, when I was wanting to learn Spanish, I thought to myself, well, there's a lot of common English words because I've heard them before. So I went online, and sure enough, somebody's actually made a list. There's over 1,000 words where English has similarity to Spanish. So for example, university has TY at the end. Well, words in English that are TY end in DAD in Spanish. So university becomes universidad. Well, a guy put a whole list together. Well, shoot, I have like 1,000 words right there. My vocabulary, because I've clued in that those TYs are DADs, and there's some other ones too. So I went and looked at English cognates, is what we call them. So similar root words. And so that was over 1,000 words, just like that. Literally, I just read the list, and just like that, I got a ton of words in my brain. And also, I live in Canada. We have to take French in school. I used to be able to read and write in French. I just couldn't speak it because we didn't have a native French teacher. So I noticed right away that Spanish has a similar language pattern to French. The sentence structure is very similar. It's flipped to English. And then I went and thought, oh, well, what French words have cognates in Spanish that I already know? Sure enough, there's a whole ton of them. Like difícil is difficult. Well, it's also the same as and Spanish has one like that too. So then right away, I was able to accumulate a mass amount of knowledge of Spanish without actually taking a Spanish lesson or having someone teach me names. With just that alone, I am able to pick, and because I know some French verbs, which are very similar to Spanish as well, and conjugate similarly, I was able to pick up enough Spanish that I can pick up most of the gist of the conversation without taking major Spanish courses. This is what polymaths do. And that's why we're able to learn very quickly. And so when people say we're a master of none or we're a generalist, what they're failing to understand is that we have mastered how to learn very quickly and very deep. Now, I can't speak Spanish super awesome because there's a different to be able to come up with the words is harder, but I've got enough that I can listen to a conversation. And because sometimes other people I can speak in English, a Spanish speaker can speak in Spanish, and we can pretty much have a conversation if they also know enough English. So I'm just giving you an example.
So let me just
underline.
Let me just underline what you're saying. You're saying that the polymath is a person who has mastered interdisciplinary learning. Is mastered quick learning. You would not have been able to ask the question. That's a brilliant question to say, gee, I wonder if there are some words that are similar. And then you find there are 1,000, you find that there's this concept called cognates, and you find there's 1,000 of them in each language. And bang, you got 1,000 words. So just to ask the question, to approach it that way, that's very polymathic.
I love that you brought up wonder questions. Those are my favorite types of questions.
Yes.
If you ask, I wonder if ... fill in the blank, and then you just remain in objective mode, and you take in information, and not necessarily make decisions about it and assumptions, but to just analyze and kind of see what pieces might fit together, and then the solutions just kind of emerge, kind of like what Samantha was just talking about.
Well, and what happens is, like, I'm just using the example of Spanish, I'm no longer at the very beginning level. I'm already at an accelerated level of learning. Like, I'm not starting at zero. I'm starting with thousands of words when I'm starting. So when that's something that all of you, I'm sure that most of you in the room can do this. What we've found is that entrepreneurs are very likely polymaths because you need to be able to do marketing, which
Right.
we wouldn't have used in old words like marketing, but they generally have they're multidisciplined, and so they often are polymaths. But we don't call them that. We don't realize that. But I don't want to go into too many examples because we want to talk about how to know if you're a polymath and make sure we cover that because some people in the room want to know that. So we've got our community did something for fun. Our Medici Modern Polymath community did something for fun, and I said, let's come up with some questions we can ask people to know if you're poly. Oh, I said, how do we know if we're a polymath? And we just kind of came up with some different questions for ourselves, and we had a really good time. It's a little cheeky and a little fun, but I'm going to let Dan lead this part and go through a quiz that we came up together as a community for all of you to find out if you're a polymath.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is there will be actually an electronic version of the quiz that we'll be posting. Just fair warning that the end you'll get a percentage. That don't read too much into that right now, but it's more just the questions and how much they resonate with you can kind of tell you like, if you're a polymath. So let me just switch over to that screen.
They're intended somewhat tongue in cheek, but also dead
Yeah.
serious.
Exactly. No, exactly. And depending on which answer you choose, it gives you a little more information about yourself, which is what I love.
Right.
So.
And you're coming through loud and clear, by the way.
Oh, perfect. Do you hear a bunch of background noise, like the bus?
A little
vibrating?
bit. A little bit. Not too bad. Not as bad as before.
Legit. Well, so just also another side note. I think being versatile in different environments, what Samantha was talking about at the beginning, one of the things I did is I just reached out to each of my seatmates next to me and said, hey, I'm going to be on this space and here's what it is and don't mean to be rude. So now I feel cool and I can feel like I can be my full self on a Twitter space, on a bus. So here is the quiz. And Samantha, do you just want me to go through it and read the answers and discuss after each question, or just go through the whole thing? Just curious.
All right, let's just try one and see how it goes. So all of you, we've never done this in the room. So this is what polymaths do. We are willing to try anything out in public because we're not afraid of what some people call failure. I don't love that word, but I like to think of fail as first attempt in learning. So we are avid learners and we learn each time something does or doesn't work out. Actually, I see Jackson has his hand up. So I'll let him, if he has a question here before we jump in. And then after Jackson, Dan, maybe just read one and we'll see how that one goes and see if we need to adjust after you read the one. So when Dan goes, he's going to read it. And we want the audience to react. So if you think it's funny or you resonate, let us know. If you don't think it's you can put I think, is there a thumbs down? Of course, they don't put any negative ones in there. But right. You don't have to react at all. All right, Jackson, you're up.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm sitting here listening, and I identified with everything you said so far about what a polymath is so much that it almost brought me to tears because it's so validating to me right now. And I have not taken this quiz. I don't know. I'm just hearing about the group you're speaking of. I was just going to offer, since I'm brand new from the audience, if you want, you can ask me the questions and I'll answer them from my perspective.
It's fading. I'm not hearing him.
Oh, what he said was what he could do is answer the questions. So let's try the emojis first on the first question. And then on the second one, we will try and see how it works with the speakers. And I've got one more hand up. So we like to try to do things while they're active and in your mind. So we'll let one more person go before everyone wants to hear the questions though. So after you go, I'm not sure how to say your Miss. Would you just introduce yourself there, the one who put your hand down?
Messy Art.
Yeah, Messy Art.
Whatever. Having some technical problems, it sounds like.
Yeah, Messy Art is amazing.
Yeah, he's DMing us telling us how awesome you are. All right, well, we'll go with the question, and Messy Art, if you're able to speak, you can put your hand up afterwards, okay? All right, Dan.
So I'm on my phone switching between screens. Just a moment. All right, question number 1. And I also put the quiz in the nest if you want to just take it on your own time. But how many tabs are open on your computer currently? First answer, do I include all of my browsers and all of my mobile devices? Why would you ask such a challenging question? Too many to count. Or I feel naked when I screen share, or none of these sound like me.
Oh, we got some good reactions in the room.
That's pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. Just roll on, because it's more
right.
of like an overall impression than any individual particular issue.
I love it.
Anyone who's got on the speaker, who's up on the speaker panel, feel free to take your mics off, and we can have what George does is interactive, so you can laugh, so that we can hear you laugh at yourself or laugh at a question. So take your speakers off, your mics off, and if you want to laugh or I totally get that one, that's completely great.
Sure.
Interactive mode.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. M. Lovely to have you. He's a polymath as well. Yeah. All right, Dan. Next question. Let's add some energy to it. I know you're on the bus, but I want to have like your energy self.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right.
Well, I was going to comment on that too, Samantha, when you were describing, and George too. Like, I think all three of us just have a spark when we talk about what it means to be a polymath. So, question 2. How many courses or workshops or seminars have you taken in the last 2 years? 1 to 2. I lost count after all the free ones everyone gave during the pandemic. Or do I count the ones I downloaded and are sitting on my massive to-do list? Or none of these sound like me.
Perfect.
We've got a lot of cry faces in the audience.
Yeah, a lot of people love it. Go ahead.
When someone asks you, what do? Your reply is, how long do you have to listen to it all?
Oh, wow.
Or, do you mean right now, this week? You want to play it humble, so you stick to citing your paid day job and maybe one pastime.
That's me playing.
Yeah.
Playing humble.
Yep. Question 4. When you go to an Apple or PC store to check out the newest tech releases, you gain multiple new social follows from people you met in the store who learn more from you. Ask to directly speak to the manager, since you already know more than the floor staff. You already read all the consumer comparison specs and beta tested in YouTube. You show tips and tricks to the personnel and semi-take over the store, or none of these sound like me.
I remember when we did this one in our group, and Kiki was killing herself laughing. It was like show tips and tricks to the personnel and semi-take over the store. I've had it so many times that people walk up to me later and go, "Can I ask you a question? Do you work here?"
Hard to imagine Kiki going into an Apple store and not taking it over.
She opens up a Nearpod and just starts giving a presentation.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
Question 5. Do you consider yourself to have an entrepreneurial mindset? Whenever you walk into a business, you think, if only they would switch this around, they'd make more money. You're always trying to figure out how you can fit in a side hustle in your already busy schedule. Mm-hmm. You have 10 plus legit business ideas and only one life to live. Pretty sure you'll have 2 ideas by next month, or none of these sound like me.
Exactly.
Question 6. Do you find yourself pursuing multiple new projects per week? I pursue pretty much everything that interests me. I eat, sleep, dream new projects. They are my lifeblood. I'm currently pursuing at least 3 projects right now. I have my eye on a new shiny one too, or none of these sound like me. Question 7. Do you lose interest in something once you have a good grasp on it? Once I've accomplished a mastery level, I feel free to set it aside to master something else. Not necessarily. If it continues to challenge me, I'll grow with it. I feel like I'm not learning something new. I'm dying inside. None of these sound like me.
Right.
Boy, that's me. I feel like I'm dying inside if I'm not learning something new.
Yeah,
and I'm 79 years old.
Yep.
Yeah.
Question 8. Do you feel boxed in when you are told to stick to one niche? It makes me feel claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. Why would anyone do that? The world's my oyster to discover and explore. Isn't being confined to one niche like a tether or a leash? I'll choose my own adventure. Thank you very much. Or none of these sound like me.
Right.
Terrific.
Oh, the
Yes.
whole box thing, if any of you can really resonate with feeling like when people want to put you inside a box and you like literally want to scream out. Actually, in the manifesto, I'm not sure if this line will make it in, but basically I wrote something about how box is like the 4-letter word cage to a polymath.
Nice. It is in our theme song.
It is. And oh yes, we have a theme song. 2 members, actually 3 members are working on a theme song, and we do talk about being put into a box. Some time ago, I wrote something on a tweet. I said something about having multiple niche disorder. I got like 3 DMs from people who are like, "Oh, I have multiple niche disorder." I'm like, every time someone tells me to go to niche, I literally feel like I like have to cut my arms and my legs off, and might as well put me in a coffin on underground and throw dirt on top. And
By the way, on that, you just made me remember. I put up in the nest a Twitter moment. For those of you who don't know, a Twitter moment is a curated list of tweets, sort of like a tweet thread that you construct and can reorder in the nest. It's the first item in the nest of a bunch of tweets that I've written about polymathy. So go ahead, Dan.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have to explore moments more. I have my own like weird format for moments that I do. But yeah, question 9. Do you struggle with fitting in anywhere for long? And this is one that just hits hard. I feel like I have to shut off so many parts of myself that I feel lonely inside. I feel like I can't be my full diverse self anywhere, not even with family. I've been a part of a community, but they remain focused on one interest. I need a place to contribute and expand my interdisciplinary curiosities to improve my life and make a bigger impact. Or none of these sound like me. And finally, oh, go ahead.
Just when I first founded the Medici Modern Polymath community, there's an application for it, and just to make sure that we're all good fit together, because we are really about supporting each other. And when I was interviewing for the founding members, this is what came up a lot. This whole idea that we can't be our full selves. And sometimes I noticed that when we were on the interview together, that some people were trying to hold back pieces of themselves. And I was like, just show all of it, because all of it is you. Step into your full self. You were made this way on purpose and for a purpose. And that in itself, people were like, I don't have to like hide parts of myself. And as soon as I started saying, even with my own family, so just for example, I can't say who the partnership is, but I'm working with a company right now that we're probably going to beta testing and starting a partnership with the Medici Modern Polymath community. And I was like so excited because it's a really big deal. And if I went down to dinner and started talking about how I'm so excited about this partnership for the community and it has to do with social audio, my whole family just zones out and they're just like, oh, how nice for you, Mom. And if I was to talk to my girlfriends like that, they'd be like, no, can we just talk about, they don't want to talk about what's going on with their kids or what's going on at school or whatever for their kids. And with this community, we share these life wins. Like every Wednesday before we start our mastermind, we have a 15-minute window, 15 to 20 minutes where we share our weekly wins. And it is a really great place because all of us really get excited for each other when we have a weekly win. It's one of my favorite times of the week. And it's a time where we don't have to cut off on our arms and our legs or fit in a box. We literally just get to be excited about whatever learning or whatever adventure or whatever achievement we've made or recognition we've got for that week. And it's just a place that we get to be our full selves. And this comes up a lot. And I think a lot of you in this audience are going to resonate with the fact that you feel like you have to cut off like very important parts of yourself. It doesn't matter where we are. We always do have to like only show facets of ourselves wherever we go. But a polymath really struggles because there's so many facets that it's like we have to shut off 75% of ourselves. Like sometimes I'll have a friend say to me, Samantha, I feel like I feel like it's very hard to talk to you because I feel like I can't think in the same places that you can, or something like that. And I'll be like, oh man, I was like cutting off 75% of my brain just so that we could have a serious conversation about whatever it is they wanted to talk about. And yet that isn't good enough for other people. And I don't want it to come across as an unhumble way, but I'm like literally trying to do everything I can to shut off massive parts of myself so that I can integrate with society. And then it comes back with, you're still not doing good enough. But when you're at the polymath community, you don't have to do that mental energy of trying to shut off all those things.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
and
Go ahead. Sorry. Dan?
I was gonna yield to you. But just mine is a quick comment. One is when we're in those weekly win times, there are so many disciplines represented that not only can we nerd out with each other and just support each other and be excited for each other, but there is just usually really sophisticated feedback and important critical feedback for our own focuses. So that's one of the things that is just really phenomenal.
I'd like to hear the last one, but and after that, I'd love to hear more from Jackson, because I know he's got more things to say about this, because I have a couple of questions for him. But Dan, can you? What's the last issue?
The final question is the cheekiest of them all. So when you finish reading a self-improvement book, your private gut reaction is typically, I think I would have phrased the conclusion differently, but I see what they were going for from a marketing perspective. I can see how this author can extend this into a trilogy, and then of course, I might reach out to them and make a few suggestions. Or that book could have maybe been just one tweet. or none of the above.
Boy, I really resonate with that as a guy who's read, I don't know, 200 or 300 self-improvement books. I think I've read them all, boy. But I want to point out something that Jackson said and that Samantha said, and that I found, Dr. M and I found when we ran a group on Polymathy a month or two ago. And that is that people can't, like the session that Dr. M and I ran, people were crying in the group. They had heard the term polymath for the first time. They had been belittled their entire life because of being a polymath. I mean, some were in their 20s, some were in their 60s. And they had been unappreciated as polymaths. And all of a sudden, they had this new word they had never heard of before that wasn't ADHD. And we can talk about the differences later. But all of a sudden, they had this label, and the word that kept coming up was validated. So when we run additional groups now, I'm going to have to. All people wanted to do was read their list, all the things I'm accomplished in, because all of a sudden it got liberated, and they were so proud of it. They had been belittled and told all kinds of nonsense, religious and otherwise, about pride, about denying your pride. And all of a sudden it got, I'd love to hear from Jackson if he's willing. I think it was very brave of him to be open about being almost in tears before. So I'm going to take that as a cue and a little bit of a read of him, that maybe he's perhaps willing to expand on what the tears were about, or the almost tears were about.
Yeah, I'm absolutely open to sharing more.
I kind of guess so.
Just to real quick, I'm right now running into a gas station, and it's going to take me 5 minutes. So once I get back outside of the gas station, I'm open to talking about any of this.
Okay, sure. Well, just break in when you want. But what I'm most interested in is what are the tears about? I'd like, in fact, when you come back, I would love to talk to the tears, if you don't mind. I know that's a weird way of talking about it, but I'd like to talk not to you, Jackson, but to the tears, if you're willing. Again,
George, can I jump in there? Hi, everyone. Would that bother you? Because I'm not going into a gas station, and I've got something to say exactly on this point.
Please, of course.
And my connection keeps cutting out. So there's a couple of
now
things.
You're loud and clear. Dan. Loud and clear. Perfect.
Great.
Perfect.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Samantha. So
Hey.
just great to see you, Dan. And Dr. M, just a couple of things that I wanted to bring in, and also about this idea of the tiers. So I'll come back to the tiers at the end, but just a couple of things I wanted to say. One of the things I learned at university when I was doing psychology that absolutely gave me such a huge boost going through the process of making a recognition of what we're calling a polymath is that there's a lot of data on where certain professions peak, what ages they peak at it. And I don't know that this has really been addressed yet. So, an athlete is going to peak in their 23 or whatever, but, a philosopher is going to peak in their 70s and 80s, 90s, because this is really where it takes so much time to collect. And time is a big parameter here, because somebody who's a polymath is going to start, maybe with an understanding of themselves through criticism, through being a jack of all trades and having many, many interests. But that's because time hasn't happened yet. So if somebody who is and I don't want to use the word intelligent, I'm going to use the word growing wisdom. If they're growing wisdom, they will get past intelligence and just fitting facts together and looking at patterns, because there will be many patterns. There's like the kaleidoscope where you can just take off that whole pattern, start again, take off the whole pattern, start again. And each time those things, being drawn through from heartedness of the deep interest and commitment of the person might get dropped out. Because in my own life, I'm not only a professional artist who's shown globally in Biennale and given master talks and won national and international awards. I'm a psychologist as well who's had a very long practice. I've lived long enough now to speak 3 different languages, and I've learnt them literally from the ground up by being in, Thailand, and now I live in France, and, I speak English. At the same time, I've won national awards for radio broadcasting and voiceover work. I've learned metaphysics and had a metaphysical school where I've taught metaphysics so that I could get a larger rubric. And each one was about expanding the rubric that I could continue to fit in. So something you said, Samantha, was so beautiful. This idea of being boxed. For me, it's the idea, it's this feeling of being a canary in a cage. Yes, I can sing, but I'm in a cage and it's killing me. So once I know that I've got to a point in any learning curve, or it's put upon me, all these things that you've just said about, you're this label or that label, I often, go back to that space and say, I'm really the only one qualified here to put those labels out. So that'll be enough with the labels. And if we read the DSM, we often are able to diagnose ourselves with everything in there, because, so many of those diagnoses are about selling drugs. And if you wake up to that, then you just no longer listen to any kind of label, because it's only ever going to get, cold and stale very quickly.
The DSM is an evil book.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And that's why they keep rewriting it, because it's a constant reaffirmation of the wrong track. It's a bit like
reaffirmation of nonsense, right? Exactly.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I learned that in special education too.
Yeah,
exactly.
The thing I wanted to say about the tiers, though, is that because it takes a long time to get from intelligence to wisdom, and there's a lot of ostracism that has to go along with that, because everyone on the planet is at different stages of their capacity to maintain holism at the same time as expansion. Now, those two things are paradoxical if you really think about it, because while we're expanding, then we're actually, we've already said we're sitting in a holism, and how those things are constellating out of us as a being, because what we're doing is a self-discovery process. What interests me? How much interest do I have in it? And where do I not call myself a failure when maybe I'm going to go back to it in 5 years' time or whatever? There's a part of my life which was radio broadcasting maybe 25 years ago that, I haven't particularly participated in, but it's come up regularly, and I often speak publicly, and the doing voiceover work, has constantly come up. People ask me to do this type of work, and I haven't had the interest in it. And I think there's a part of our own inner wisdom, our innate wisdom, that frees us to be able to drop things off our capacity lists without them losing any relevance, and then pick them back up and expand them into a new field.
Beautiful.
So it's not so much that we're sensing where we can drive across subjects with our pattern. It's where we can keep shifting patterns and creating a greater holism in who we are as living beings. So something that I listened to today in one of the groups that I run is that there was a part about forests. And somebody posted something about redwood forests that up in the top of the canopy, soil that accumulates up to 3 feet deep. And in that soil is a new ecosystem that then the forest can tap into from the canopy, including biosystems in those systems, which create new roots and new biosystems in and of themselves. So if we see ourselves not as a competing tree down at the roots and it's spring and everyone, is trying to get the resources and the nutrients, but we see ourselves as a complete system, which is an expanding forest as a being, then we don't get to the point where those tiers tear us apart. Because being isolated is kind of part of the putting it back together. There's an undoing of what's already been built up as a holism and almost dismantling and reconfiguring, just like it is when you change a life or you die or whatever and then come back to life. So if we give ourselves this incredible, and I don't even want to use the word latitude because it's just one plane, but a circular holism around what it is that we can take in as beings, then jack of all trade is no longer going to become something that cuts us down. And supporting each other is incredibly important, especially further down the track. Because if somebody who's in their 50s or 60s or 70s can look back at somebody who's in their 20s, who's being ridiculed for having many interests, which is part of what a polymath is and grows out to be, and sees themselves as a budding ecosystem that has not yet recognized all their capabilities, then they will give themselves that time and not ridicule, because that doesn't grow anything. So I just wanted to add that in now and hope that adds to the discussion. Thank you so much for your questions, Dan. You made me laugh. I love them.
Something that you did is very typical of a polymath, and I want to pull this out. Did you notice her ability to use an analogy where she crossed disciplines to come up with an analogy that would cross other disciplines? And that is very that's a talent that I see a lot in polymaths. And this is something that Leonardo da Vinci did. He would study an area and then he would take another area. Like, for example, he studied the body a lot. He was obsessed with learning the body, obviously, and also because he was painting and wanted to be able to properly show the muscle structure and the structure of the body. And he noticed a huge overlap of nature and the body, like looking at tree root systems and the way the ventricles work. And so he was able to use analogies. So when he was talking about trees, for example, or when he was talking about hearts, which people couldn't see, he explained them using analogies of trees that people did understand, because he was able to cross those disciplines and explain complex ideas in a simplified version in the language that the hearer was able to take it in, just like what we just heard from Messiart was able to do that. So thanks so much for everything that you said. And what she said about this idea of this box. This is something I hear a lot. Like whenever I go on a Zoom call with somebody who wants to join the community, the first thing we talk about, this comes up a lot with boxes. Literally, I've seen it almost 99% of the time. People start breaking down and they're like, it's exactly how I feel. I feel like I'm being put into a box. I feel like I have to hide all these beautiful parts of myself that I spent a lot of time and energy developing and taking care of and nurturing and to flourish, just for other people to just stomp on it and say, this isn't important, or you need to take this out of you, or I don't want to see this part in you. When in fact, and when we do it to 20-year-olds, right. And when we do it to 20-year-olds, young 20-year-olds, I call them pre-polymathic, because polymath is someone who's multidisciplined. So they could be already disciplined by that age. But I generally, just from what in my personal experience, have been seeing about 25 is where you can say, yeah, I'm for sure polymath, because there's an accomplishment involved. But pre-polymathic or aspiring polymaths, what we're also seeing, and I want to make sure we touch on this in this space today, is I want to talk about ADHD. And because George has a background in psychology, he's a professional who can speak, who has expertise in this area, because he's actually been someone who's diagnosed children with ADHD. So I'm hoping, George, that you be comfortable with talking to the audience today about the overlap of ADHD and polymathy. And actually, before you start, Ashley has her hand up. So I just want to make sure we catch Ashley. So Ashley, we're going to go to you first before we talk about ADHD and polymathy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've actually been tested recently, and I was told that I don't have ADHD because I can't remember it, which is a little odd, because I'm thinking, the memory and how things work, especially when you have so much going on with you at a young age, the fact that wasn't factored in to the diagnosis or like the process, that was a bit of a concern to me. But I'm going to table that because I want to hear what George has to say. I
Thank you.
just tweeted out about my experience as a polymath, and I think we've all connected over the last year or so about a lot of these qualities. And while what meza art, I want to pronounce that
Misi,
correctly.
it's a shortening of my name, but it doesn't
Missy.
matter. It's really not important.
Misi art. Thank
Whatever
you.
you want.
Misi
I
art.
answered it. I know what you're saying.
Just say that brilliant gal with the cool art profile. That's what you could
Oh,
talk
not
about
only
her.
I not only followed her, I put her on notifications.
Yeah, her mind. I followed her too.
Amazing.
Her too. Yeah.
And I will too. I'm going to definitely add you to one of my lists. The word that stuck out to me that I sat with while you were speaking was criticism. And the tweet that I just wrote says, liberation for polymaths is moving beyond criticism to understanding our true nature and using our curiosity or self-exploration to turn our weaknesses into strengths. Everyone
Exactly.
here
I love
is
that.
oriented.
That's part of the manifesto. Wow.
Exactly.
Actually, honestly, the tagline I've been working with lately is I'm not sure if we're gonna tonight's mastermind group with our Medici with our Medici modern polymaths. We're going to talk about our manifesto tonight, and I've been thinking about this tagline of like making. I don't have it quite all the way down, but making polymaths sought after again, and that really plays into what you were saying, Ashley, because at one time. Polymaths were sought after. In fact, I'll just give you a little bit of background here why the word Medici, I probably don't say it correctly because I'm English, I speak English, but the Medicis were a very influential family in the around the 1500s, some 1600 up to 1600s. And they were originally a trades family. Medical is what Medici means. So the original Medici was a doctor who moved into banking. And was able to come up with this double entry system for any of you nerdy accountant people out there that actually came from the Medicis. And they actually were the first ones to invent what's called traveler's checks, which we don't really use now, but we used them for a long time. So from their bank in Florence, Italy, you could draw on your funds from in France. And this traveler's check, if you will, was able to take this banking system internationally. Well, because of their keen ability, they landed the papal accounts. So you can imagine one bank landing the entire papal accounts for. So they were quite wealthy, but what they did is they used their wealth they're instrumental in the Renaissance, because what they did is they used that wealth to bring in some of the greatest talent and budding talent too. They brought in the greatest talent and budding talent, brought in mentors. They created little schools. They even some of these schools full scholarship for this budding talents, and these were in the arts. They were in the science, the socials, everything. Now Milan was a little bit more intellectual and more science based. Florence was a bit more arts based, but they were very close together. So what the Medicis did is there was an uprising and upheaval going on in Turkey, and that Turkey had a massive library and knowledge center, and people were fleeing Turkey. And so what they did is they took all this knowledge with them, and these libraries, and they were libraries that were accumulated from the East and from Africa, the great thinkers of Africa and Asia, like all over the world, and they brought them into Florence, and there was a surge of knowledge and wisdom that came in. So a lot of the greats came out of that Medici influence, where they were proponents of this, and they could have used this for war and taking over the world, their influence, but they didn't. What they did is they used it for good. And they also took care of the people. They're really good at taking care of the people, which is why we're called the Medicis. We're taking on their legacy about curating some of the greatest talents, and then helping those talents even become greater and influence for a great impact in the world. Now, Leonardo da Vinci didn't live in one of the schools per se that the Medicis ran, but he had a letter from the Medicis when he went to work for some of the key people in Milan. So he was a beneficiary of them accrediting him. Now, Michelangelo came out of that period. If any of you have been to Italy and you see, like, especially in Rome or Florence, you see some of these amazing architecture, a lot of that came out of the Medici wealth. They were funded through the Medicis, and they were also funded. Obviously, they took these brilliant minds and allowed them to go to work and create using arts and science. So if you go into if you look in the domes, that is a scientific and artistic accomplishment, just like the pyramids are, right? So that's why we're called the Medicis.
I got to give you something. I just got to give it
please.
to you. I'm like, got to give it to her. I have done shows that are still part of the Medici rubric. I was invited to Venice. I've already showed in the Biennale in Florence and another one in Chianciano. And I live in France now and came here exactly for what you're talking about. But I came from the Templier area, which is also about checking and whatever. So you're talking about what I live. Now, the way you're speaking about it sounds so historical, but let me tell you, it's alive. This is not something that is, thank you, George. This is not something that is a historical reference, because when you go to those places, the thing that you're looking at on my little circle, my PFP there, is a painting that's made out of nanotechnology crystals. And the vision that I had came after meeting a whole lot of artists at the Florence Biennale, because the reason we do Biennale as artists is so that we get to meet each other. And this was supported by the Medici Foundation. So this is a living energy that still functions very, very strongly, and hence the living aspect of this energetic. Wow. So don't see it as a historic, please, because it's such a live energy that they were probably sitting in something that's some kind of vortex that we have yet to measure.
Yeah, and also the polymaths is not some dead thing that we're reviving. No. Most of the world's inventions, and Steve Jobs was a polymath. Elon Musk certainly is a polymath. A lot of the great innovators and leaders of all time are polymaths. Why? Because in a world of silos, of specialists in digging down deep into silos, you need integrators. And it's the integrator that causes the breakthroughs, because the breakthroughs are the connection for thoughts. That's what creativity is. That's what new ideas are. And it takes a polymath to connect them.
George,
and stepping out of time, not using time as a parameter to kind of, as you said, Samantha, box us in, because this is a flow. This is a flow that is continually folding over itself. It's a stack, if you want, but it's an integrated stack. And if we take time out by throwing a plumb line down the center of it, then it all connects together as a kind of humanness and energetic expression. But yeah, Samantha, what you're saying is so fascinating, but it's a living thing. It's like it's here now in the room. We're in it.
I love that. Well, I'm hoping that
thank you.
So some of the community members and I were talking about the name, and I'm like, well, the Medici family is either going to be really happy about this, or they're going to be like, hey, you can't just go and steal our name and use it for something else. But I did drop the day off, because day means of, which what they use in a lot of languages. So hopefully they'll be pleased to know that we want to model this curation in a community where we thrive. It's a tribute, really, a tribute to what they did. And a lot of the other Renaissances were inspired by this original one. The French Renaissance came after, especially when Leonardo moved there. And they wanted to replicate what was happening in Italy. And I think there was other Renaissances. There's probably some similar ones you may find in Africa. One thing that's difficult is that a lot of other countries didn't record in the way that we do now, or in the way that they did in Europe. And so we'd like to just acknowledge that we believe that there's been polymaths in every single continent, every single type of people, just not all of them were documented, especially females. So people of color, I was going to say people of color, and especially people of females, were not documented, but that does not mean they didn't exist. So a modern polymath can step into that. Yeah.
Female polymaths are considered to be flighty and not taken seriously. And
Absolutely.
it's really, and there are a lot of people who would argue that any woman who, brings up several kids and maintains a career and is taking courses all at the same time is certainly a polymath. And
George,
it's hard to argue with that.
It's very, very threatening.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
Right, exactly.
Well,
so there are many, my favorite female polymath was Hedy Lamarr, who was a drop-dead gorgeous movie actress in the 40s and 50s. And but in World War II, she invented frequency changing radar that's used today in Bluetooth and other technologies, still used today. So there are many, many female polymaths. I'd love to hear from Jackson if you don't mind.
Yeah, just one second before we go to Jackson. Ashley, she was just jumping in there while you were while you were speaking, George, and she. Oh no, it's all fine. We're doing interactive mode. Yeah. So Ashley, just jump in here, and then after Ashley, love to hear from you, Jackson. Now that you're probably finished with your gas station.
Yes, I feel like it kind of came back around full circle for me because I wanted to push back a bit on the point about children. I think polymaths know that they want to explore and do what they do much earlier, and they may not be nurtured in that way. So when you're talking about women who are oftentimes connected to children and are the ones that are showing children how to follow their dreams and do multiple things at one time well, and succeed in various arenas.
Yeah, I think what happens is we get told, oh, especially if you're a mother, you're neglecting your children.
Exactly.
And whereas a guy, it's like, oh, you need to pursue your passions. If you want to learn, if you want to go pursue this on a Saturday, go right ahead. And the female, it's like, wait, what? Are you neglecting your children? I'm an avid traveler. You've no idea how many times people have said to me, wow, you're abandoning your children. And I'm like, mostly I travel with my children, actually. And I'm with them like all the time. And yet those 1 or 2 weeks that I leave, I'm abandoning my family. And it's like a male would rarely be called out like that. So
right.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to make sure we get to Jackson because I'm doing this really cool thing this afternoon. This is what polymaths get to do. I got invited to a summit for young entrepreneurs who are presenting their ideas to an expert panel of 18 from around the world today, and we're judging their projects. But because they call us entrepreneurs, but because entrepreneurs are usually polymathic, that we're able to speak into many realms, so we can give them suggestions about how to get their projects to succeed. So it's with this really cool foundation. It's called the It's Ideas Empowered by Youth. And it's, if you're interested in watching it today, it's actually Ideas by Youth. It's actually going to be broadcasted publicly if anyone wants to get a Zoom and watch it for 2 hours. So anyway, I just want to put that note in that those are the kind of cool things that we get to do and why it's important to own your polymathy, let everyone know what it is, because we do have a special talent. We have lots of special talents, but we have a special talent that a lot of people can't do, which is when we go, when you get 18 judges of people with major diversity, it's like having probably 150 specialists in the room. So that's really special. Yeah. All right, Jackson, you're up. You've been patiently waiting. Thanks, Ashley, for that contribution. I love that you're so passionate about. You need to join our community, Ashley. See you soon. All right, Jackson, you're up.
See you soon.
Thanks. Yeah,
Oh, shoot, Jackson, we still can't catch you. I try again there.
I don't know if is he collecting his thoughts or is he pause? There was a pause there. We did
try
not
again,
hear
Jackson.
what you said, Jackson. Oh boy.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry. So everything that's been said has been resonating with me too. And speaking to kind of what I was saying before, like I said, it's been validating. I know someone's mentioned that word specifically.
Right.
And it's partly a couple different emotions going on, and these aren't new because my life has kind of been cyclical in that ever since I was a kid, I remember the first instance of this I remember is thinking all my friends have this taste in music that's like kind of genre specific, but I like a little bit of everything. And I remember thinking as like a fourth grader, why can't I just decide on one style of music? And then as I got older, it just got more and more diverse. I was like, why can't I decide on a style of person? Am I a punk rocker? Am I an emo kid? Or and this went into my studies. I got a bachelor's in history and philosophy, went on to get a master's in international studies. This whole time, I'm trying to figure out what I need to do and what I want to do. And some of this is coming from other people in my life saying,
okay,
I just don't know who I am. Sorry?
So you arrived here today and you came came to tears or almost to tears. I forgot what you said. What's that about?
Because basically all of that stuff, those little examples I just gave, leading up to now, still just, it's like deep down, I've always known there's nothing wrong with me, but it's so hard to fit in intellectually and emotionally in the societies or the environments that I've lived in my 35 years of being on this planet. And it's like, I don't know, it brings me to tears, for one, because honestly, it pisses me off, because I had someone last year, a manager, tell me that he doesn't understand how my mind works, therefore I'm not a good software engineer. And I was like, dude, I may not have been born with this. I don't think anybody is, but I spent 2 years getting a master's in computer science, and I spent all the extra time, and that's just like one example where it's like, you don't understand my mind, so therefore I'm lesser, or I got fired over that. And
I wonder if he was picking up what people would call, or like what they would think is ADHD, and what Ashley, you were saying earlier that you took, I think it was you who said you took the test. I think some people can be on the ADHD spectrum and may not come up high enough to be diagnosed full ADHD, or maybe they're undiagnosed. But you could be on that spectrum. In fact, just so all of you know, by the way, Leonardo Da Vinci, expert people who've studied Leonardo say that he was ADHD. And he was one of the most brilliant minds. Some of the things that he came up with were 200, I'm not joking, 200 years before the next people documented the same thinking that he came up with. Now, the problem with Leonardo da Vinci is he was a thinker and he documented everything, but he didn't publish very much. So imagine I can't even imagine how far ahead we'd be. Not that we need to be much further ahead, but where we'd be had he published his work. But I think what Leonardo da Vinci, what was unique about him is he wasn't worried. He's a self-directed learner for his own purpose. He wasn't so concerned with sharing everything with the world. And here's one problem that we get when we share our epiphanies or our great discoveries with the world, then the world wants to just talk about that. And something that I talk about on my podcast sometimes, one time somebody was interviewing me and they said, do you fear failure? And I was like, oh no, I don't feel failure. And they're like, what? And I was like, I fear success. And they're like, what do you mean by that? I said, because when you succeed, other people start to steer your ship. And I want to steer my own ship. And so a polymath can really understand that, because if you are really good at something, people, like, for example, I was a professional photographer. I still get requests all the time for some of my photography. And I will talk about photography and use it in a speech, but to actually, do a professional job as a photographer, I'm not interested in doing that anymore. But people who loved my photography want me to keep doing it. And so they want to steer my ship. And the Leonardo da Vinci, I think, figured this out very quickly, that if he shared his discovery all the time, all he'd be talking about, and maybe he would have done bigger discoveries and had a larger impact on the world potentially. However, he was able to pursue other passions because he wasn't consumed by just talking about whatever discovery he had shared and the world wanted to talk about. Because other people take a long time to get to where he is. And so he'd have to do seminars and publications and run schools. I mean, it's quite a bit to share some of your discoveries. So many people in this room, some of you have probably come up with innovative ideas that would literally change the world. And it's okay that you don't necessarily share them. What I've learned is sometimes when I come up with ideas, that's art to me. It used to bother me that I didn't finish these projects, or I didn't finish this business idea. And then I realized, for me to come up with an idea or an innovation or see something, an aha moment that I think other people would really benefit from, but I don't always share or don't have the capacity to, I realized that that's art for me. The idea conceptualization is art. And it's okay for me to do it just for myself and then set it aside and work on something else. So any of you in the room who sometimes feel like you haven't finished something, more than likely your 70% that you did is like 150% of what the general public did. So you're way over the medium. But just because you didn't hit your 100% does not mean you weren't over the medium already. So I just want to kind of put that out there. And I want to talk a little bit about ADHD before we close the room, because we said we were going to talk about it. Let's just go to Sheilas one first, and then Sheilas, if you can just keep it
very
tight.
Briefly,
just so that we can have some little bit of time to talk about ADHD, because George is a professional in that area, and I want to make sure he speaks on it.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Hey,
Hi,
George. Hi,
Samantha.
Hi, lovely to have you
So I
here.
just want to say I'm mad at you, Dr. M. I'm mad at you, George, and everyone else who knew this information and kept it to themselves because
Oh
this
no.
stuff, when I
She did
got
say she was mad
here,
at me though.
because I don't know you, but I know them, and they've encountered with me, and no one ever brought this topic off. When I first got in here, I got so pissed off, like
Oh, sorry,
outraged,
Sheila.
like mad, like I wanted it to tear this world apart and just like dump it in the dumpster. Like this really like ache my heart to hear these things that and thought that I was a weirdo my entire life. You understand what I'm saying? Because
Exactly.
I
Of
had
course, we understand what you're saying. Exactly. Yeah, I
I
was a weirdo all my life. That's a perfect way of saying it. I mean, that is
Tell us a
exactly the
little bit
way.
more, Sheilas, how
Yeah.
you felt when we were talking about this. We'd love to hear this because this is common,
outraged.
and
I
I want the
just felt
rest of the room to
outraged.
hear this so that they know they're not alone in this.
Yeah, and the listeners subsequently
Yeah, I
listen
just
to
felt
this.
outraged. I just felt outraged. Like no
Mm-hmm.
one saw me my entire life. Like
Right.
how do you not know that? How can you not identify that in a child and say this is who I was? So in school I used to hide my potential. I
Mm-hmm.
used to hide my potential because I didn't want someone to pin one thing on me because I knew I could do multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I speak of spirituality, but I am great in fashion. I can sew a suit, I can make a gown, right? I can
Right.
also build things in my house. And my husband, you think you're the man of the house because I can build
Well,
things.
man has the word man in it, so you
Yes,
can share it.
but it's the way that I build things. It's the way that I make things functional to
Mm-hmm.
work
Right.
that impresses people. And so with my family, I used to always feel like I had to hide who I really was
Mm-hmm.
because people never understood me. I can speak on different topic and they thought I was just trying to fit in because I was so versed in different things, you know, and I had so much knowledge on everything. I can go from fashion to scientific
Yeah.
Yeah,
to
I
technology,
I bet
you
you
know.
people I bet you hate the phrase. I bet you hate it when people say to you, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it."
Exactly. And it felt like I had
Because
to
you're always
suppress.
fixing stuff that isn't broke.
Yeah, I had to suppress a part of myself and
Mm-hmm.
it kept trying to come up. And I'm like, girl, shut up. There's no room for you in this world. Like, be quiet. You can only
Oh, there's
be one
plenty of room.
thing,
No,
you
no, you're
know?
the one with the
Oh,
superpower.
Sheilas, you
You
got to
have
join
the
our community because
Yeah, you
this
got
is
the
exactly
superpower.
every single person who has started to join has gone through this journey. I have like all of the interview when I was interviewing for founding members, with both George and Dan, our founding members. So is Dr. M in the audience there. We're founding members, and this is exactly what happened with all of us. We're like, wait,
Yep.
what? Well, George not so much because he knew he was a polymath, but to get he's never. I don't know that he's been in a community with polymaths,
No,
but
never.
right, all of us were like, wait, what? We're not the only ones. There's I belong somewhere because like for me, I've been constantly trying to find a community to fit, and I go there like photography, writing club, and I absolutely love it because this is what happens with polymaths. We get really excited in the learning process. We're curious, and when we're feeding our curiosity, our adrenaline, our excitement, and our energy just gets a high level. And what happens is I call that the intersection. So intersections are interesting to us. So when we're in intersection with a community or with other people, it's so fascinating to us, and we just dive super deep. But after a period of time, what I've noticed in other communities is that it's a not quite flat lined, but it's a very like if you were to imagine an X but turn it sideways, and then they're on the one that just goes up slightly, and the polymath is one whose growth grows up accelerated very quickly, especially because we're bringing other learnings in. So our growth goes very quickly because
Mm-hmm.
we're bringing in all this previous knowledge and ability. And so, like now, imagine an X. So what I call this is the growth gap. And this is what happens. So every time we join a community, we're on that intersection, and it's super interesting. But after a short period of time, or it could be a couple of years. I was in the photography club for many years, but then I noticed that there's this what I call a growth gap. So that's what the part of the community is about, is my inspiration to build a community where they grows just as fast as you do. And some of us are learning different things right now. Some of us are all about social audio. Dan right now is doing a lot of he's an edpreneur. So he's
Entrepreneur.
doing educatedpreneur. Yeah, I can't get that word out. He'll probably jump in. He's on the bus, so we'll see if he speaks in. But what I was
Mm-hmm.
saying is that we can ask each other quick questions even, and it's like so fast. Like the other day, George was like, he's like, oh, Samantha. Oh, he's like, hey, does anyone know how to do this? And like 5 minutes, I gave him an answer. And he's just like, I literally searched the internet for 3 hours and I couldn't find the answer to that.
Right.
Yeah,
It was
You know,
like,
what happens is there's a phenomenon that I've been calling. I've actually investigating this for decades, because I used to run audio only experts groups. That's the way I made my living, doing experts focus groups. There's a phenomenon called psychological critical mass, or that I call psychological. And critical mass is the mass at which you get a nuclear explosion. And when you get 2 or 3 or 4 polymaths, let alone 8 or 10, you get an explosion of new ideas. You literally, it explodes because the connections come fast and furious, and from all over the place. You'll pull what you know about photography and perspective and focus and all kinds of things, and what you know about psychology and what you know about philosophy and boom. And somebody asks a simple question, boom, you got. I do want to talk a little bit though about ADHD versus polymathy. I don't want to make a big deal of it though.
All right, let's just go with George, because I know some people have been waiting for that.
Yeah.
They might, if you're in the room and you're just holding on, maybe you're on your lunch break, depending on which time zone you're in. We'll talk about the ADHD, but this is available on replay. So you are able to jump back in if you have to leave because you're on your lunch break or something like that. You can come back and listen to the replay or reach out to any of us speakers. Before you jump into ADHD, and I know some people need to leave the room because they've got things going on at work or meetings they got to jump to. We do have a community. It is a paid private community. We're in stage 2. We did a soft launch earlier. We're doing a little bit more revamping right now. So if you're a polymath, you can be versatile. We've moved to a new messaging app, but we have a community of us. We meet and we meet consistently every single Wednesday evening, North American time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. And it's only an hour and a half, but lots of times whenever the hour and a half is up, many of us still stay on for another hour and just chit chat. And it's pretty fun. That's pretty awesome.
Hang out, right?
Yeah. And it's okay if you bring a glass of wine for the end and want to do that or eat your meal with us. So yeah, or at the beginning. We're pretty informal for the most part. But anyway, please go to the Nest there. I put our website up. Oh yeah, so I recently founded a community just for polymaths. The website's under construction, so please don't judge us by the website because it's under construction. But you can apply through there. It is an application process, and then right now it is $97 a quarter, which works out to about $29 a month. Some people asked why. Well, it actually costs quite a bit of money to run a community because, anyway, they're obviously understand that. And also you need to have a vested interest. We anticipate that the membership is going to go up when we get to our new revamp and our new websites up. But at this time, you can join for the $97 a quarter. And why a quarter and not a month? Because we want to make sure that we invest in each other, and the feedback that you get is so it's way over the $97, to be honest. Like, if you just want to have a phone call with me, it's like $500 an hour just to have a phone call. So then you get like all of these lines where you can just ask a quick question. That $97 is very easy, but we want to make sure that you intend to stick around for a little while, not just come and invest in the community as well. So I just want to put that out there before we talk about ADHD in case some of you want to learn. So you're invited to apply. Yes, the application is a bit long. But we are really curating creating the minds in there because we're creating a value system and how would you call that? What would you call that, George? Like when you're trying to create a community of
a value ecosystem. I'm off the bus now. Yes.
Oh, sweet. Oh, there's Dan. Yeah, like a valued ecosystem. Right. Yeah, we're definitely a valued ecosystem. So anyway, there's the invitation. We'd love for you to join. Our entire community is going to be doing Polymath spaces every week. So you'll see different members come up and run spaces about polymaths with a variety of topics every week, and will not be consistently the same time. Everybody's got different times that work for them. So pay attention. Some of us, you will see that M. I don't always have the M at the front of my name, but if you see that M in someone's bio or their name, more than likely they are part of the Medici Modern Polymaths community. So that's one of our ways that we let people know that we're in the community. And sometimes we just put it up during spaces so you can see it. Not everybody has it up. George doesn't have his up yet.
Forgot to put my M up. Sorry.
No worries. So the M actually stood for Metro, but nobody was using it. So we decided to hijack the M. as our symbol for the Medici modern polymaths. And you should see when we had a workshop on a TED Talks, how to land a TED Talk. I brought in a speaker for that, and it was an open public one. And then you should have saw the whole sea of M's on the Zoom call. It was really fun to see. So because everybody who was a Medici member put their M on there on the Zoom call. So all right, George, I talked enough. Let's talk about ADHD, because I think that a lot of people here want to hear about our take on ADHD and polymath.
I don't want to deliver a whole psychological lecture, so this is very informal. I deliberately did not prepare a set of notes, but I want to take off from what Samantha said before. The article, I've read all those articles. If you Google, was Da Vinci did Da Vinci have ADHD, or Da Vinci ADHD, Polymathy, you'll get a bunch of articles that talk about whether he did not have ADHD. That's a bunch of specialists, who are called psychologists, speculating about people they don't understand. It's about people are speculating about Da Vinci. He may or may not have had ADHD. I'm not convinced one way or the other. He sure did leave a lot of things incomplete, and that's a big sign of ADHD. But I think these labels, as Mishi was alluding to before, it's a lot of needless labeling. Look, there is such a thing. I don't deny that. ADD is attention deficit disorder. ADHD is attention hyperactivity deficit disorder, and it is an attentional. I hate to use the word disorder. It sticks in my throat. It is a condition under which people have difficulty regulating their attention, which can mean either high distractibility or hyperfocus. So, for instance, I dabbled with coding once. I started teaching myself, I think it was BASIC, decades ago, I think on a Thursday. And I found myself on Tuesday, not having eaten, showered, shaved, whatever, totally in a hyper-focused state, learning or trying to figure out how to apply BASIC to a particular assignment I gave myself to learn it. That is super, super hyperactivity. It scared the hell out of me. Never did a line of coding after that. It scared me to death. But that's ultra hyperactivity. Hyper focus. So attention deficit disorder. It's not really a deficit. It's an attentional disorder. That's got little to do with polymathy. Polymathy is whether you are accomplished in different areas. Sometimes it helps to be a little ADHD or a lot ADHD. Sometimes it doesn't. There is a lot of overlap. There are people who are ADHD or ADD who are super focused on one field, and they're super specialists. So they're obviously not polymaths. So you can be an ADHD without and not be a polymath. You can be a polymath who's perfectly able to regulate their attention just fine. So that there is no necessary overlap or even relationship between them. That being said, a lot of polymaths are diagnosed as ADHD by people who don't understand polymaths and probably have never even heard the word. So this whole medical model of psychology is one of the reasons I got out of psychology. At the time, it was totally medical model. What's wrong with people? How are they dysfunctional? What disorders do they have? What neuroses, psychoses, and character disorders do they have? And I was having none of that. I'm on a complete personal growth model. And I totally reject the medical model in psychology. I don't deny that there are
that there is mental illness in the sense of impaired functioning. No question about that. But to base a whole friggin' field on that is like, building rocketry on broken down engines. It's just nonsense. So this whole ADHD thing, I would not be too quick to accept the diagnosis of ADHD. I would not be too quick to go on Ritalin and other medications. I would.
That those are made to. I sometimes will use the word like dumb down or numb down, because most people can't handle the sheer activity of somebody who's in a child, especially pre-polymathic, very active. I had this the other day. I was meeting with a gal, and she was telling me about how her son is, I think he's about 11 or 12, and the school just has diagnosed him said that he has ADHD and wants him put on Ritalin. And so I asked her a bit about her son. Well, he comes home from school, playing a musical instrument, he's playing a sport, he's, doing his science experiments all over again that he did in school. And I was like, oh my gosh, your child is an ADHD. Your child is pre-polymathic. And she's like, oh, my husband's actually that way when I explained what a polymath was.
Right.
And I was like, sweetie, he's just going to be a lot more work for teachers because they have so many students. And what tends to happen with polymaths, and all of you will say, is a lot of people will keep saying to me, you need to rest. You need to rest. Why don't you rest? Do you ever rest? Well, my resting is switching activities.
Right.
So when I get, a little overwhelmed in one area, I'll just move to another one. And it's a different state. It uses a different part of my mind, or maybe I can be more sedentary in that particular one, but I'm still active. What people underestimate is the capacity of a polymath. We somehow are able to do just more than most. It's like, even one time I was taking another course in something, and my husband's like, are you trying to be a superhuman or what? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, why do you need to learn that? Do you already know all this stuff? And I was like, I just need to feed my mind. It's like a hungry monster. I don't know. And it just wants to eat cookies all the time. And the cookie is the learning. And I'm like the cookie monster, but with learning. I can't feed my mind fast enough.
Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
What we've often learned is what's called deliberate practice. See, people practice, meaning they repeat the same thing over and over again, and they think they're learning, whereas they're really locking in mistakes. Most polymaths have learned what's called deliberate practice, which is breaking it down into the hard parts and then practicing the hard parts only, very slowly, or in piecemeal, or in some easified way, or simplified way. So we have mastered the learning process. And I learned this later as an educational psychologist, but I learned it really when I was 7 years old from my violin teacher, who taught me she didn't teach me the violin, she taught me how to practice. So that's what.
That's what
we
yes.
do. So,
hey, George, let's go to Dan. Dan, jump in because he's been quiet, and then we're going to go. I just want to make sure that I Am Eerie knows that we are going to jump to you right after Dan, and then shortly later we're going to close the space just because I've got a bunch of meetings lined up this afternoon.
Awesome. Yeah.
So Dan, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I just wanted to nerd out on neuroscience a little bit. Just in that discussion.
He's our neurodiversity expert in the room.
This obsession with attention in schools, in the school system, I think we have to kind of start picking apart what is learning and what is school. Because school, by its very nature, and this is speaking from an educator perspective, is unnatural. It's not natural. It's not how we're hardwired to be able to sit in one place for 7 hours and focus on one thing at a time and switch on the hour, to be able to just manage that. That's where we're seeing this deficit, or this disease, or this disorder, where really it's just an unbalance. And what has to change is not the brain. What has to change is the system of brain is in, and the teaching. And so just looking at learning, I'm a hardcore advocate for flipping Bloom's taxonomy. And we don't need to give students this basis of facts to then they can analyze the facts, and they can apply that knowledge, and then they can synthesize the knowledge, and then they can do a little bit of creativity. If we start with creativity and we just say, all right, every year in school, every moment of your life is now kindergarten. Go discover, go do something exciting, go explore, look around you. Our brains, we've got two attention networks in our brains. We've got the ventral attention network, which really just kind of keeps us safe. And then we've got the dorsal attention network, which it orients us. So one of my neuroscience superheroes is Dr. Andy Huberman. And he's got this super protocol that I will evangelize about forever because it just makes so much sense. In order to learn anything, you have to, number one, get alert. You have to have that attention. And so it's a shift. It's that very visceral or like natural part of our brain that's just always keeping us safe. It's our hardwiring for safety and self-preservation. And then you have to get oriented. You have to become aware of the different parameters of a certain schema and then how to orient yourself to that. Those two things are non-negotiable if we want to learn something. So if we are giving somebody medication to make them numb, to numb all of these two processes that are going on in these two different attention networks, we're not really going to help them learn anything. We're going to placate them. We're going to just put them in stasis and just let time pass by. And
just making it easier for the teacher.
Exactly, and so that's not classroom management. That is
right.
That's stopping learning.
Bravo,
you're increasing like school, but yeah.
Love it.
Bravo.
I love that you bring this up so much. And there's two things that hit me really hard here is the idea of approval and judgment. The minute.
Whoops, she went down to listening.
Oh, we lost
I don't know
her.
what happened.
All right, we're going to let I am Ari go to respond because he had his hand up earlier. We were paying attention. Polymath can multi-pay attention. And we'll
request again, Missy.
Yeah, request again, Missy. All right, I am Ari. We'd love to hear from you. Did you have a question or contribution for our space today? Oh, maybe he can't speak. All right, Sheilas, I'll DM him a minute. Sheilas, go ahead.
Yeah, let me see. When Dan was speaking, I was thinking like there's something that we polymaths we can see the connection between multiple things at once. This is what drives people crazy. It's like we can connect how math and science and fashion and photography connect to something to solve a solution, right? And so when I went from fashion to IT, my husband thought I was bugging. And that's exactly the same thing. When I came into IT and I was learning, I realized I went for the hard things. The hard thing is fun for us because we know it's in the hard things. We're going to dissect what the heck IT is all about, right? And so it's because we're looking for the connection, right? So within IT, I was trying to figure out how does the 0 and 1s come up and mean something. And so when I figured it out, then I was trying to figure out, well, the motherboard. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh my goodness, a computer is exactly like a brain. And I can tell you which part of the brain does what the computer does. And I can tell you how that relates. And I can literally say that human beings are computers, and I can tell you why and how we do that. You understand? And so we see things in different ways. It's like when I'm in school, if I'm learning something, it's like, listen, I need to hear it. I need to see it, and then I need to read about it. And I can do all that instantaneously and not lose a beat, right? And people think like, what are you on? And it's like the hunger for learning. I'm always on YouTube learning different topics. And my husband's like, why are you learning this? Weren't you learning this yesterday? I can see connection into things and I can make things up, but I can't share those information with anybody because no one would understand the level until how I've connected things, you know?
Sheila, that is a superpower. You are not only okay, you are so beyond okay that I don't have a word for it even. It is. And so you've really got to validate yourself. You operate in this world differently, like Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Galileo and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and I
Ben
can go on and
Franklin.
on and on. I've got a list of 54 of them right here in front of me. You are like them. They are not freaks. They are people who saved the world multiple times. You're the Richard Feynmans of the world, and the Einsteins, and
Pythagoras,
the
Pythagoras.
Pythagoras, and all these people, the Hedy Lamarr, and the Madame Curie, and all those. That's the kind of people we are, and it is not only valid. I mean, that's like baseline stuff. It is super. It's just.
I think some of
we
us
need
come
to,
from like
celebrate.
Right. I think that sometimes when we come from, like for me, I went to a Catholic school, spent a lot of time in Christian circles. And if you say you can do something and you're not 50, if you're past 15 and you say, oh, I can do this, it's like, oh, you need to be humble. And it's like, oh, I'm not allowed to say that. It comes across as arrogant. And there's a difference between arrogance and confidence. So we do have to learn. It's not always easy. Like we're being pretty bold in here. If I was, sitting in a baby shower or something like that, I wouldn't be like, oh, I can connect dots that other people can't connect. I'm not going to say that out loud in that way. But it is nice to have a community where we can say that and not be judged. It's just a fact. It's not a bragging. It's not arrogant. It's not narcissistic. It's literally just a fact. And that's why in our community, we do that. We'll just sit there. We don't have to, all those filters that you have to put for the outside world, for the most part, we just are ourselves in there. We're like, oh, I came up with this really amazing idea today. And then we talk about it. Or I came up with an amazing solution today. And we don't worry at all that anyone in the room is like, wow, look at them. Who are they? It's all like super cool.
Yeah, right. What you're making me realize is that, one of the things I should have said before is that with regard to ADHD and regard to polymathy, it is how do they affect your life? That's the important thing. It's really what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And it's a lifestyle. We don't want the lifestyle of the specialist. There's nothing wrong with specialists. They're wonderful, and they make a lot of amazing discoveries. They just don't integrate them with other things. But they make amazing discoveries in their silos, and we polymaths tend to appreciate, we're kind of in awe of the specialists, but they don't tend to appreciate us because they just don't get it. They don't get how our minds work. Our minds look undisciplined to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, they think we're undisciplined, and we appreciate their discipline, of course, because we think of ourselves as a little undisciplined, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with being undisciplined. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is how it integrates. It's exactly what you say. It's how it integrates into the holism of the life. Can
your life.
Yeah, can that person expand their experience within their life to the point where, by the time that they step out of their body, there's this, continuum of that particular person flowering out in every direction that it could understand about itself.
Right. Is it enhancing? Is it enhancing their life?
That's it. Does it enhance the holism of the possibilities of that person? Right. Because one of the things that I studied at university was with one of the lecturers that was thrown out of Cambridge, and some of the other experimenters working on open brain subjects, which there are not a lot of them because you don't get a lot of open brain subjects. Anyway, he was thrown out of his grants because the results that they got with their experimentation was that memory was actually held around the head and not actually in the brain, because before the electrode actually touched cortical tissue, they were having statistically significant results. So what they concluded, which was not accepted by the British medical establishment, was that memory was actually held around the body. So when you find people that have had amputations, they often have memories, and they call them phantom memories. And so it showed, go back to Carillion photography and all these other energetic mechanisms like EE systems and 0-point energy and scalar waves and all the stuff that we've got in front of us now. And we can understand that as beings, we're an energy being. We try to fit ourselves in our bodies. And in my experience, and I've died 4 times in my life, each time I've been clinically come out of my body and seen the physicality of my body, I've realized that I'm still there. So, and there's a huge amount of data now on people that have had similar experiences to mine. I'm not unique in that. So, and there's a massive data that is very interesting, but not accepted by the establishment, because the establishment wants to fit us into a model of physicality. Now, this room
because
that we
we're
are
more
in now,
it's more convenient.
it is
And it's a matter
exactly
of their
way more
convenience.
convenient.
It's very inconvenient for a teacher to have a kid like me or Samantha or Dan or you, Misu.
Yeah. Very,
we are
like
not
Samantha
convenient. We're not convenient kids to have in a whole group of. We're very wonderful to have one-on-one, but we're very disruptive in a classroom. I was called the.
But
class
you know what? There are
clown.
things they can do.
Yeah.
Like I think that because with specialists, like it's interesting because oh, I must have cut out. My phone was ringing. In a realm of specialists,
we can hear you now.
Yeah. So in the realm of specialists, which the education system isn't necessarily geared for specialists. It's when it comes at the end, we're getting into high school and all of a sudden, we do embrace arts and science and those, we don't blend them, but we do study a variety of them. But then when we get to the teen years, it's like, now you need to pick one thing. And the entire school system knows that. So although they've been teaching a diverse set of subjects, it's all with the idea that you're going to choose one of them. And they don't think of it as a combination of them. What I'd like to see is something that we'd like to do in our group when we get a little bit larger and have some more resources, is to come up with some ideas that are easily implemented in the school system we have, because a revamp is just not going to happen, but some adjustments can happen. So things like when you've got a child who is what I'm going to call pre-polymathic, is, have them teach the other students so that they're not just sitting there, halfway through the math class when they're already done all the assignment and they're just sitting there. And it's not a lot of work for a teacher, because for me, like the teachers were always trying to give me extra sets of problems to do. But instead, one of my teachers was super smart and he just said, Samantha, would you mind going around the classroom? I can't get to all the students. So I literally went around and taught the other students how to do the math. And so it amplified the math instruction in the room. And turned out later when I was in university and needed money, I actually went into tutoring for a while. I tutored junior high math to pay for my bills. And it was all because this teacher literally just said, hey, why don't you help me out? Gave me confidence. I had a bit of experience in tutoring in the classroom. And so there are things that we can do in our system, but it's going to take some polymaths, some very vocal adult polymaths who can speak adult language to advocate for our youth so that we can be more versatile with them. We're not going to change the classroom. So I'm not going to be on that bandwagon. We do need to revamp the system, but it's just not going to happen. Those take years and years and years. That takes years, but we can make some positive adjustments. So we're almost at the end of the space here. We did get, I am Aries back up. So before we finish the space, I am Aries back up. And I want to make sure that Dan, if he's got some contributions, because he was off the bus or he's off the bus now, maybe able to speak. And I just want him to give a little testimony about what it's been like to find out he's with all of you. It wasn't that long ago that he found out he's a polymath. And I just would love for him to just share a little bit about what that journey's been like for him before we close the space, because I think that would be really wonderful. So I am Ari. You've come back up to the mic. I think we had a little technical issues in the space today. So you've got a question or contribution for us?
Hello, good evening, Samantha. Are you good, madam?
Lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks. Good evening, Mr. George, and everyone. Hi. Good evening, guys. You know what? It's been an amazing experience. In the beginning, I thought, because I studied law, so, we pride ourselves to wanting to learn almost basically everything about anything. And along the line, I realized that, this is not it. I mean, there's something different in me being able to learn anything and being able to do anything that I really, really put my heart to. And, at some point, it seems like a burden, because now it'll be like, but you can't just know everything. I mean, you can't. It seems abnormal.
Oops, it's fading out a little bit.
No, this is actually a weapon. It's actually a tool, advantage, and I concentrated on that, in being a mentor, in actually priding myself in being able to resolve and, come up with, basic, simple things to any difficult issue. And since then, I feel so liberated. I feel so free and all that, So.
Oh, I feel so liberated and free. We love that. Keep going.
Yeah. So when I just say some certain things. Okay, for example, I think I should share this. We fell some trees in the yard. We have a big compound. So we remove about 5 trees. So there were a lot of things that needs to go. And the guy that was to come and pick the trees now charged me ridiculously. And I thought about it. Wait a second. Why do I need to pay for this guy to take these trees out? There's something I got to do with this tree to actually let people come and pay me to take it out. And I started thinking, like, okay, I could make charcoal out of it. I just called this guy, give them money. You got to make charcoal for me. This is how we're going to make it. So what am I saying? That the tree actually went out of the house, but instead of me paying for it, I got paid for it. And
this is called, there's a word, this is called creative problem solving.
You get it.
And polymaths do creative problem solving across circumstances, even in a mundane, simple situation like this.
You get what I mean? So things like that kind of give me joy. So the moment I realized, I felt free, I felt liberated, I felt I could do more and more. And you mentioned something about kind of our wings being clamped down because of religion, because of faith, like, be humble, don't show yourself too much and all that, So I think that is the area that we need to concentrate more, because a lot of people feels that, what, let me not feel awkward, or let me not feel like step on people's toe. Let me just tone it down a bit. You don't need to tone it down. Spread.
You don't need to tone it down. I love that. Yep.
Fly. Whoever is offended, it is their headache. It is not yours. And I'm going to end it with
it's
this.
Their problem, right? Exactly.
There is a saying that, because I love, what, when a snake
Oops,
walks alone, or cross alone, there is being happening to that snake. But when you walk when you crawl in a company
I'm Ari.
of others,
We're losing you here, buddy.
Your mic is cutting in and out.
I'm happy to be here. I would definitely be joining the group. Samantha.
Ari. Sweet. Well, I hope you apply, Ari. I'm sorry, we're having a lot of trouble with your speaker. Next time when you come up, try to be as close to a Wi-Fi source as possible, or maybe you've got Bluetooth headphones. The Bluetooth headphones are good for audience, but not so great on the speaker. They seem to cut in and out when you're on the speaker. So yeah, that may be what happened to you there. So, I'd love to hear more from you. He was in a space with us earlier, and he's very appreciative. I love when there's an attitude of gratitude. Something that he said is a message that I speak a lot, and I want to make sure that we say I want to say this to all of you, because I've mentored hundreds of people over my lifetime, and and obviously we us people who are alike in many ways attract each other. Very, very often, people have said to me, "I've had to dim down for others. I've had to, go inside of myself and tone it down." Tone it down is another one. Tone it down, dim myself. These are very similar words. And interestingly enough, I've done that too. Like, I've literally thought to myself, I need to crawl under a rock and go so small that I barely make it, I'm barely visible to the outside world, because I've sometimes hated all of this, or loathed parts of myself, especially when other people found annoyances with them. And I've been told many times, dim down, dull down, all of those things. And it's interesting, because I've been in Twitter spaces now for over a year. And this message has come up time and time again. And finally, what I used to tell people in mentoring, and this is why I want to say it, because I've been bringing up in spaces, is when people tell you to dumb down or dim down or dull down, what I like, think of it this way. I'm going to give you an analogy. So imagine a big, like a majorly deep well. like a water well that's empty, and you're at the bottom of, and somebody in the world is down at the bottom. So the world is going to seem very dark. They're way down in that dark, dark well, 25 feet down into the ground. And what are they going to need to feel hope? What are they going to need to feel impact? They're going to need to see a big, bright light next to them. A small, dim light is not going to do anything. But what you need is a big, bright light. We were all meant to be big, bright lights. So now I kind of this little cheeky saying that when people say, I say, oh, I'm shining too much for you, go get sunglasses. Because a lot of people need the shine that you have, and it literally brings life. Like I've gotten a couple DMs from some of you that are earth-shaking, heart-moving, saying, I never knew I could feel this way. You have validated what I felt. You mean there's nothing wrong with me? I felt alone in this world. I felt lonely in my head. We hear this a lot. And because the panel came up here, Dan and George and I decided to shine. Earlier, we heard Sheilas say she was angry at the world and at us for not telling earlier because what did we do? We dimmed down.
We held back.
We held back. So this community we have isn't necessarily to go to the world and say, hey, look at us, we're so awesome. But it's more to say, hey, look at us. We celebrate the awesomeness about us, the things that are awesome. Yes, we're not perfect. And we know that, but we're actually celebrate our imperfections, which is funny. That's why we were laughing. We made this quiz up and we were laughing at ourselves, at our imperfections, and just laughing about them and taking them in stride, because that's what versatile people do. We take them in stride. So we're going to be closing the space here right away. And so I'd love for Dan to be able to have some closing remarks. And those of you who DM'd us, we'll try to get back to you throughout the day. I'm in meetings straight till probably 10 o'clock tonight. So I may not be able to respond as well as I'd like to today, but I will tomorrow. But we appreciate that all of you came today. We appreciate that the next few weeks is going to be groundbreaking for many of you, because when Dan tells you a bit of his testimony when we finish here, you are going to hear what's going to happen to you over the next few months. And I've been working with many, many polymaths, and this has happened time and time and time again. Every one of us have got, even me, like even months later, George and Samantha, George and Dr. M and I have got on a call, and Dr. M and I, like for 3 days, my brain just went like literally epiphany after epiphany, and self-acceptance, just self-acceptance actually was one of the big ones, and some just real key understandings about how we fit in the universe and how the universe fits with us. So Dan, I'd love to hear a little bit about your testimony about what happened with you when you and I met and we discovered together that you were a polymath.
Yeah. So just heads up, I've got about 2 minutes. So I'll do the expurgated version, but that's okay. No, in true polymathy or polymathic fashion, I've got a meeting where I'm advising somebody in like 2 minutes. So it was like a door open, and it's one that I knew, like a door that I always knew was there, but I had over the years intentionally kept it shut because of one word that I call the F word, and that's focus. Because that's what I have.
I've never thought of that. Oh my gosh! Yes.
Oh my gosh! It's the F word. So when I'm told to focus, that's what shuts me down. Because I have a unique way of focusing. My wife describes me as a web thinker. I'm very much not concrete sequential. I will see many possibilities in many different layers of and anything that I can pick on going through the course of my day. So for example, like when I'm at our movie theater, which is also our stage theater, like in the middle of a movie, I'm thinking about how can I get some like phasers in there, and how can I rewire the DMX to to be more efficient, and don't we need like a 40 amp service or something like that. So I'm always calculating, I'm always investigating and exploring, and that used to not feel okay. But since finding this community, it's been the norm, and that is what I think I would say my message is right now, is that I think we're on a mission to make it normalized, to make this word polymath and the very essence of being polymath normalized again, you know, because it's not like it has never been, like we mentioned earlier in the space. It used to be sought after, and it used to be something that is celebrated, but because of our societal development, whatever it is, there's a whole bunch of like a perfect storm of influences have pushed multiple disciplines and polypassions into kind of a box. And so that's, you know, I feel like I'm always coming home on Wednesday nights. You know, it's, even though for me on the West Coast, it's hard because it's kind of right in the middle of our family time. It was worth it enough for me to talk to my family and say, hey, can we adjust this on Wednesdays? And like my wife adjusted her gym schedule, and she's like, I'll just go to the gym then, and then you can talk with your polymath, you know. And so it's that's what I would say too, is it's worth adjusting because I haven't felt so in my own body before, you know, as far as being my whole self, and knowing that it's okay to nerd out on neuroscience at the drop of a hat because people might be interested, you know? So that's, I don't know if I said anything earth-shattering, but to me, this whole experience has been earth-shattering, and just an alignment of everything that has always been me, but now it can be publicly me. So that's
it's like
my
a step
story.
into ourselves or something, right? Like it's like a step into our own skin, and we're more comfortable with our own skin. Is that a way you would explain it, Dan? Like
it is,
it's like a skip in your step to be in your own
yes.
self. Yeah.
And you say a lot, and I think I mentioned it earlier too. Like there's just a spark that comes in our cadence when we're speaking about the things we're passionate about. I do have to jump because I'm 2 minutes late, so okay. I've got to jump. But thank you so much for this space, and you know, we maybe it's a polymath thing.
Thanks for doing
to
all.
Have 1 hour spaces turn into 2. That's okay too.
Yeah, I was like, we got to keep it to 1. I got a full schedule today, but
I got another one to go to too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
but
Bye,
yeah,
everyone.
with everyone here, we wanted to, when we start getting people having, you know, major moments. Thanks, Dan, for coming today. Everyone, give Dan a big clap there. Thanks for coming, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, and when we're with all of you, we've been starting to run these polymath spaces periodically, and this is a common response we're getting with all of when people are like crying. I finally feel like it's okay to be me. I thought I was the only one. I think there's a whole bunch of more of us. This is a good thing. This is a great thing. This is something I can be proud of. You know what? I've worked really hard for all of in all of these areas I've learned, and for other people to acknowledge that I can use that knowledge to impact the world or come up with great innovative ideas. I mean, there's a community of you that are doing it. And we're a community of about, I don't know if we're at 29 now, 27 to 29 of us right now. I just soft launched recently, and just opening up stage 2. We're doing some revamping in the back end. So if you don't mind everything not being set perfectly when you come in, then you're for us.
Yeah, follow us and put us on notifications at least for spaces. We're going to be doing a bunch more spaces.
Yeah.
1 a week, taking turns. I think I'm up first, either this week or next week.
Are you on?
I haven't figured out a time yet.
Yeah, a number of our members are going to be holding spaces on being a polymath, and they could even be like, you know, parenting for polymaths, or how does a polymath parent, to more of a scientific realm. We've got Dr. M in the room there, and he runs a lot of spaces on AI. He's actually a physician as well. I know those aren't all necessarily polymath rooms, but he's a polymath, and when you listen to those rooms, you're going to hear his polymathy come out.
Right.
And so it's funny because he was in a space a couple of weeks ago. He usually co-hosts, but he's been running spaces. And I definitely need to catch his spaces. And I was like, I DM'd my friend, and I was like, oh my gosh, you can hear that Samantha or Dr. M is a major polymath right now. Like he was literally just combining so many things. There was sparks going everywhere. But what you can do that's really cool that most people don't know about right now on Twitter, you can actually set up notifications for just spaces. That's pretty new. So a lot of people don't know it's there. So if you go to our timelines, you come across one of us who are in the Medici modern polymath community, and some of us have the M on our bios and some of us don't. I have an M on mine. Usually it's moved over at the end of my name. Yeah, hit the bell and get notified for the notifications so that you get notified when we're running spaces.
Right.
But better yet, join our community, because we have a back channel where we share our spaces. So then you know for sure which spaces to jump in. And we definitely let the polymaths come up and speak so that we can share, because we're about supporting our community and then inviting you in. So if you're interested in joining our community, it is an application form because we are looking for a community where we thrive really well together, and that it's a good anyway, there's an application form. And there is a fee. It's right now it's 97 quarterly. It's going to go up once we move to we've got some new things starting out, but that 97, I swear to you, like what you even get in the first few times is worth way more than that. But the values there, we've got a lot of our recordings that you can access them from some of our previous masterminds. You've got access to some of the greatest minds in the world. And I'm not saying that we're the top mind in every industry, but you know, when you put them all together, like one person is like 10 people. And we have a channel just for help and feedback. So if you have if you've got a question and you want, it could even be an entrepreneurship or an app, a lot of apps. When someone says, hey, have anyone tried this? Or does anyone have a solution for this? Literally within the day, there's
guaranteed.
Within a day, one or two people have 6 people sometimes have replied, and you literally have to cut out all your research, because you know that when a polymath suggests it, they've already done probably like hours and days of research. So we pretty much just take each other's suggestion and be like, well, if George suggested that, I'm pretty sure. And by the way, don't let George's age fool you. The guy could be like 20 something with his tech knowledge. No joke. And his mind is sharp as a whip. So, and we love having him in our community. Thank you so much, George, for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for initiating the whole community. I mean, who would have thunk that, bring together polymaths? There are more than 3.
Yeah. On Wednesday nights, I'm so excited. My whole family. Yeah. We all vibrate amazing. After. You can hear the vibration. Yeah. We're all energetic.
But the next one I do probably next week is on, I'm probably going to do it on the specific mind skills for polymaths.
Yeah. That's your specialty.
What are the specific skills that are needed for polymathy?
Yeah. And if you are a polymath, you'll catch on to his skills very quickly and be able to adapt. He has even just small word changes, like there's this whole why movement, know your why, what's your why? Well, George uses a technique where he switches why for what. And it is profound. You will hardly be able to go back to why again. So even though you're polymath and you might think, oh, I don't need to learn these mind skills, they will amplify what you already have going on there. So I definitely recommend you checking out George's spaces, especially when he's teaching his mind skill methods. They're amazing. Like really the whole world they need it. I personally think it should be education curriculum worldwide.
Working on it.
Yeah. We're trying to help them. And that's something that came up in our polymath community is because George has been working on this book for quite some time. He's already written some books and published them, but now he's doing one in public. And if you go to his timeline on there, you can actually access the book that he's got going. And not all of the chapters are finished. So he's outlined it. And then sometimes you come to a chapter and it's empty. So Dr. M and I got together and we're like, you know what? George needs to finish his book. And I'm just going to say this bluntly. He's not, he's 79. So we're not sure how much we want to make sure that book is published in his lifetime. And then we have an opportunity for him to teach us and go through it. So he is really good at social audio. He's one of him and his partner were the first social audio experts years and years ago when they used to run focus groups. Yes. Focus groups through audio, kind of like a telephone, how they'll tell those telephone systems where everybody party lines, sort of like party lines.
Conference calls.
Yeah. Conference calls. And so anyway, together, this is what happened in our polymath community. Together, Samantha and I ganged up on George. We came up with a plan and we said, George, we want to help you get your book finished. So George has been running some spaces, recording them, and then putting that into the chapter so that at minimum, at least a recorded space on the technique that he was trying to teach is in there in the audio form, because it's much easier for him to do it for an hour or two on a space and record than it is for him to type it all out. and then edit it and finesse it. So these are things that polymaths do. We come up with unique, innovative ideas. So his book is a combination of some written and some audio. And, the audio can be transcribed if he's got time later. But this is what polymaths do, and this is what we do for each other. So we'd love for you to join our community. And you've got it up in the nest. You can contact me through DM as well if you want to join. And we look forward to seeing you in more spaces. And for all of you people in the room, all the audience and polymaths, I should not call you people. I'm pretty sure most of you are on polymaths. For all of you polymaths in the room who sent a special thank you message, thank you. It honestly, that's when we run these spaces and we get your kind of responses. We're always like, we need to run more of these spaces. We need to run more of these spaces.
And we will. We definitely
will. Yeah, we are.
All
right.
We are. Thank you so much, Samantha.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining today. We hope you have a really great day.
Have a great day.
And and if you come up with any profound impact or epiphanies over reach out to one of us main speakers from today. Let us know what happened, because there's nothing more rewarding than finding out that when you shared a unique message to someone in just the right time, how it impacted them, it impacts us back. There's a reciprocation in that. So please reach out if you had a major epiphany or if it's changed your life. And for sure, if you join your community, you just get to do it in the weekly wins, because we have for the first 15 minutes of all of our master classes, we literally spend the first 15 minutes with just weekly wins. And that's an open time for any of us to share a weekly win. So once we get really big, it might be hard to do. We'll have to figure out a different method for that. But anyway, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
You could be anywhere, but you were with us today. So we're super excited. And we look forward to seeing you in more of these spaces and on our timelines. And thank you again.
Cool. Thanks
all right.
again.
See you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Goodbye. Talk to you soon. Looking forward to talking to all of you soon again. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's been great.